Hello.
We are in this knee deep in this really wonderful conversation that I don't know that I've necessarily spoken about writing in the form of writing. We've talked a lot about culture and spirituality. And one of the reasons that I asked you to do this vlog with me is because I love our conversations. There's that. But I think it's so revelatory when we can move out of like a structured format and just have a conversation like this. It could have been an interview. I could have done the right thing and introduced you, Riham. Hi, she's in Egypt. I'm Anastasia, and I'm in Alabama. There we go. Introduction. But there is something to be said about just a raw, messy, friendly conversation that can bring so much more learning, and it can really turn a subject inside out for people. I also think what's coming up for me now is just how much more you've got to actually pay attention, right? Like, if you're in a conversation like this and we're kind of ping-ponging and maybe someone understands some things, maybe someone wants to stay with something and think about it, like you're really forced to be more present in a conversation as opposed to just going to a reading, knowing you're going to clap, clap, clap after someone does their read. And
there's something about, it's like you said about having a conversation, heart to heart connection when people are just being themselves. And it's just a conversation. It's not something for show. I'm allowed to be who I am. I'm allowed to show. I'm allowed to connect. I mean, that's the whole point, connection. I mean, for me, writing has always been about connection. A lot of people write to escape. I write to connect. And that's that. I mean, I center my work and my fic and my mentoring on that point, connecting. That's why I always focus on the concept of emotional resonance, how to write with that focus. Writing emotionally resonant pieces to connect. I want to connect with you. I want to connect with my reader. I want to connect with myself. And that's the whole point for me about the story, connection. So when you're in a conversation, you connect.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that really makes your work stand out to me and makes it so rich is that it's oozing with connection. I'm looking over to my bookshelf and I'm like, I know I have a copy of Love is Make Believe. Do I want to dash off and grab it? I'm going to dash off and grab it because it's just so good. Probably broke rule number 458 about things you shouldn't do during a live interview. Love it. There is something that's so incredibly emotionally resonant about your writing that almost feels like a balm. I write essentially to organize my writing and to organize my reality, and so often that means that like I lack a lot of emotional resonance. And sometimes I've had so many people, especially when I was frequenting these writing groups in New York City, say like, are you making this up? Are you like, what are you doing? This is all so surreal? And I'm like, nah, this is my reality. So on one hand, for me, reading you is meeting that connection like a teacher, or even I want to say like a mother, very nurturing as a mother. And that's another reason that I wanted to call you in and have you work on Kiezkoeker with me. Kiezkoeker is my next autofiction manuscript, and it is a journey in and out of the subconscious, a journey into spirituality, but also there's like an organizing principle to the reality of the narrator, and it's a play. It's a co-participation. No, that's silly. Participation means two. It's a co-creation between the reader and the writer. But what I was envisioning trying to do, I think I really was trying to tease out my own emotionality, but I wanted to stay true to what was like coming up for me on the page, but knowing that it needed to go in the way of emotionality, not like the traditional story where it's kind of infused from the get-go. I wanted you to start flat and just, very image based at the beginning. I definitely want to, for folks who don't know your work or who aren't familiar with you, let's just drop a few little tidbits in, right, from your bio. You are Riham Adly. You are an award-winning fiction writer and editor from Giza, Egypt. Your story, The Darker Side of the Moon, 2013, won a Macan Award. You are longlisted in Brilliant Flash Fiction. You were nominated for a Pushcart. So much work out there. There's assistant editor in 101 Words magazine, and you offer signature workshops, flash fiction, writing from the subconscious. You've done it online. You're offering similar workshops in Egypt. So you got the whole shebang. So I was just like, if there's someone who can understand my vision, and help me try to reach that emotionality, I was like, it's going to be you. Then we kind of, and I remember reaching out to you, and you were kind of just like, I don't know. You didn't know if you could meet my vision. But, I think the point of vision is to just, go bigger than what you've ever had before, and then whittle it down. So can you kind of speak to what it was like working on the manuscript, or what it was like for you?
The best thing about your manuscript was that the idea of autofiction, and that I wasn't really working on something that is a traditional manuscript. It's not something labeled as fiction or something labeled as memoir or nonfiction. It is autofiction. So for me, that was treading in foreign land. I wasn't really, I usually go in when I do developmental edit. I have my, set of rules that I occasionally break. Certain structures that I am kind of familiar with, that I like expand out of. But this was kind of like some new territory for me. So this was exciting, and at the same way, I was like, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if what I had to offer was what you were looking for. But I love that you were so open, and that you allowed me to just guide you and say whatever it is that I have to say. And every time, I did several readings to that manuscript. Every time I would discover something, I would stop at a certain concept that you are, trying to elaborate or trying to show. And I would just sit there with myself thinking and wondering if maybe I got it right, or if I should ask you to change things. I would always tell you, please, I want to feel more. I want to see more. Let me feel. And like you said, it was more about organizing the experience, or organizing the perception. And as someone who is completely drenched in the idea of emotional resonance and bringing that out in the text, I could feel it within your manuscript, but I just I wanted to see more of the feelings. But when I did a second and the third, after the second and the third reading, I had to respect what the protagonist or the narrator was going through. Is that sometimes, and that is something I learned in psychology and psychoanalysis, that sometimes the emotion is there, but it's just that the character is not ready to let it out. Maybe there's a reason why it's suppressed, and this is just how it is. It doesn't make sense that like across, I don't know, 100 pages are full of emotion. So there was stops within the narrative where I just had to sit and try to listen beyond what is my own judgment or perception, you know, of what, how the narrative should be, how a form should come out. You know, I had to listen to the narrator, and this was basically connection. So I loved the manuscript because it you know, it helped me see things differently. It helped me see you and the vision and the journey differently. How you, the experience you had in each city and the timing of it, and you know, it was kind of like time traveling with you. You had to go to the past and then the present, and the past and the present. And I'm so, you know, used to doing things chronologically. And then there was those, you know, leaps across time, you know. We're in 2020, and then we're in 2006, we're in the South, and then we're back to London. And it was just, you know, it was kind of like, it was, in the beginning, it was a little bit overwhelming. I wanted to have some structure. I wanted to have some structure, some place to like move on from. And and the integrative part, I love the interactive, and I call it integrative, the parts where you ask the reader their take on this, if they, how they see themselves. If they're in this state, they should go to that chapter. And I think that this is kind of like the core or the whole point of the manuscript, is to involve the reader and to create that connection. And as and you're basically just the explorer, the adventure, the neighborhood looker. You know, that was the thing that I missed. You know, that was the whole point of the whole journey. That was what you wanted to bring through, is that it's like we're in a human experience, body, but not necessarily purely human experience, and that we're here to explore and observe and try to kind of like, in a way, transcend what has been forced on us in terms of conditioning or in terms of perception. So I was able to do that. And with every revision, I was able to see more, and I was able to actually understand you better. And I'm really looking forward to see the final product. I mean,
oh, thank you.
Version of it, how it'll come out. And I would like to read this as a reader rather than an editor. And I would like to actually, you know, interact with it, like write my feelings and choose the chapters to go back and forth into, and to feel involved. I was just touching on this point that the best thing you could do as a writer is to get the readers involved. I mean, that's what makes a piece of fiction work. That's why some books are bestsellers, is because the readers get involved.
Yeah, and that's where, are you complete with that thought?
I am complete with that thought. Well, I was just wanted to say that I'm teaching a course, a writing course here in Cairo, and I was giving them a lesson on how to use literary devices, images and imagery and literary devices. And rather than go the traditional route of explaining the literary devices and giving them exercises how to do that in writing, I was explaining the importance of each literary device, that we use those to actually shape the perception of our readers. So there is an element where, as a writer, you can make the decision of either involving your reader or manipulating your reader.
Yeah.
You can do both.
Yeah.
So like when we create imagery, we support it with a stimuli, for instance. We are putting them in a certain state. When we're using a very strong metaphor, we are hitting them with a message. Like every single literary device has a purpose. And I keep teaching them to write with purpose, write with purpose. What is it that you want them to see? What is it that you want them to feel? And there's that writing where I'm letting them see and feel whatever they want. I'm not controlling them, and I'm not manipulating. And I felt that was what your manuscript was doing. You're not aiming at controlling or manipulating perception of the reader. You want them involved and to kind of build their own thing, just to get inspired from your own journey.
Yeah,
And that's where it was a little. That's why in the beginning it was a little. It took a while for me to get immersed into it because I'm used to doing, using the words and imagery to bring out a certain concept, a certain theme, a certain emotion, like my emotion. I want to color your world with the way I feel, with what I want to say. That's how I do things. So your manuscript is really unique in that you allow the reader to create their own thing, to get involved. So that's something.
Thank you. I want to also just dip in and say that autofiction is a form of fiction in which I am the narrator. It's about my life. There are different, more mainstream pieces of autofiction, like Sheila Heti's How Should a Woman Be? I think that's the right title. And she just kind of documents the inner life of this housewife who's an artist and having all these dabblings. And for me, I take pieces of what I've lived. In this case, the Keats Kokoro manuscript emerged out of several blogs that I had written over the course of like 20 years from all the places that I had visited. But I wanted to essentially document my own personal growth and journey. And what really came out, especially working with you, is just how much I have grown. I could see like in a, pure Aristotelian arc of like, okay, this happened, and then now I'm someone else. But like when I wrote some of these blogs, like some were like 20 years old, I was like, man, I was in a completely different headspace, heart space. And for the work that I do now, I have clinical training and I bill myself as a transpersonal guide. So I help folks do their growing and connect with spiritual things, their spirituality, with their inner space. Sometimes that means we go beyond the personality, and sometimes we're looking at the larger ecosystem of the world. And we can kind of dip in and out of the emotional experience, because sometimes that emotional experience that they're looking ultimately to uncover might be a little too painful, too white hot to dip into, or they're just not even there yet. And I think that's what I was realizing, when I wrote about London, and when I wrote about the trips to Venezuela actually happened before everything else. And so in this manuscript, the trips to Venezuela in the more traditional arc, they're kind of in the middle, and they're at this like, they're the fulcrum of my own personal growth and spiritual realization, but they actually happened before everything else. And I realized though that when I was in Venezuela and when I had written these pieces about it, my emotional ability to process what happened there was just like non-existent. And you can't, I love what you're saying about writing into a character and writing to connect. But when you inject like the actual person, the actual narrator, me, into this character, like I can't force myself to have these experiences, or I could. And that's actually in one way in which I use autofiction with my own clients, and I encourage them to explore different versions of themselves by writing out and by writing these experiences. I know that in my first work of autofiction I did in 2001, and it was called 713, and it was just this complete blurring of reality. And I did it as an intuitive sort of creative piece, but what I lacked at the time was the cojones, or like the actual, like the ability to stand on my creative agency and stand behind my own work. And I also lacked the mental and emotional ability to kind of do anything with it. I did this work. I've always been really interested in this whole idea of co-creating your reality, or even just being an agent in your reality. So I did 713. It just didn't do anything. I did meta work, and that was about really finding some grounding and being able to navigate life with a disorganized mind and trauma, and how imagination can bring me to a different place. And at the end of meta work, the last chapter, I'm like, a 60-something-year-old woman with a kid living in Argentina. Is that categorically true? No, but I needed to have the experience that, hey, maybe my life could turn out like that. And I could kind of focus on different, the possibilities and what ifs. And I love that about autofiction, because that gave me the transformative experience where maybe in my own life, that's not how I am, but writing into that version of me gave me the emotional experience that I could then grow personally. So now with Keats Cooker, I've always wanted to do Keats Cooker and put the travel pieces together, and I never knew why until now. And so there were two pieces in your critique of the manuscript, or feedback, because it was amazing. All of it came through, and it was all like, I was like, oh my God, like this is exactly what I was looking for, because these are questions that I had to ask myself, because if the reader is asking them, then that's exactly what I'm asking myself. And so you had noted in the introduction, or actually it's a note on the title, Keats Cooker. The name, by the way, is made up of two words, Keats and Cooker. Keats is used in the area around Berlin it's a word for like neighborhood, but I like it because if you say Keats, it's like a Northern German word, and Cooker just means looker. So I just came up with this gender neutral witness name in German called, the neighborhood watcher. And that's what we were referring to before. And so in the first few pages, and I'm talking about the name, I wrote that we can actively construct who we are by curating communication through necessity and syntax. And then your response was, I don't think actively construct is accurate, because we're not our bodies or our brains even, we're much more. We can actively communicate or express who we are. Construct implies building layers of something that was not there. So I was like, yes and no. There's a chapter, and by the way, Keats Cooker is a choose your own adventure chapter. There's like 19 little vignettes that you get to kind of bounce around and have your own adventure through my subconscious in Latin and South America and the United States. There's a chapter where, true story, I was riding up the Parkway in New Jersey, which is a very diverse state in the United States, and I was listening to some Puerto Rican music. Puerto Rico is a colony, free Puerto Rico, of the United States. And there is a woman whose music that I love, but it's very, very obscure. Maybe this is a few years ago, and I know she's been to like the Latin Grammys and Ile. And so at the time, very obscure. And I was playing it in my truck, and I pulled through the toll booth on the Parkway to pay my toll. And the man who looked at me was just like, he started speaking in Spanish, and then he went to Spanglish. And he was asking me about the island. And of course, I knew that's kind of like the vernacular, that's Puerto Rico. And that at the time it had just been hit by Hurricane Maria. So he was asking me about my family. He was asking me, is everything okay? I mean, there was no way in his mind that I was just some gringa who happened to like Ile and I was riding in my truck, So I let him have it. We had this beautiful moment of connection. But I never told him I was a white girl. I responded to him in Spanish. And at the end, I think I just said like, que Dios le bendiga, God bless you. It's like as one does or says in Puerto Rico. And then he just goes, amen, amen. And I left. And not once did I ever say, hey, bro, I'm not what you think I am. So that's what I mean by actively constructing your identity, because at that moment, he was right there in making my identity with me. So yes and no to your feedback. And I almost think that, in traveling, that's an experience that I think you can have a lot. There's a chapter where I'm in Colombia, and I went to this salon in Medellin all the time. Every time I was there, the salon lady was like, where are you from? And I would say New Jersey or New York, or the New York area. And she would go, oh, como Miami. I'm like, no, New York's up here, Miami's up here. But I am forever in her mind. Miami, So yeah, so my lack of trying to say, no, let me give you a geography lesson, or no, let me tell you I'm really just a white girl from New Jersey. I kind of
Mhm.
let that had that experience of being what they wanted me to be, for them to have that moment of connection, and I was like, okay, I get that. Okay, that's cool. Categorically not true, but
Mhm.
also, yeah. And moments like that really moved me, because as you'll see when you're reading through the manuscript, there is a whole lot of disconnection in me, So
Mhm.
I almost feel like writing in this autofiction form, and that's why I kept it in. I did explain a little bit more after your
Mhm.
comment. Um, Writing about actively constructing and curating who we are by communication is kind of like, I guess it's almost like a play with the world, where it's just like that embodied dance and co-creation, which makes for
Mhm.
one heck of a Swiss cheesy story. But do I get the validation, the emotional experience that I needed? And that was yes. In both cases, yeah, because we connected. And, I wound up always going to get my mani pedi, and then we would always rap. We would sing rap, Calle Trece songs, this woman and I would just, we had our own kind of construct of the world, it was, thinking about it now, I'm just like, oh, but it's true. I don't think you would write that because it sounds so illogical, but it's almost like truth as truth.
It could actually work within the, when you said co-creation, it kind of like, I can see it's like the magical world, co-creation. Because when someone says construct, I felt like someone forcing a certain authority. That's the first thing that crossed my mind.
Okay, so it's the word. Okay.
But when you say co-creation, oh yes, I'm constantly co-creating my world and my perception and my identity because, like you said, agency. I'm in control. I'm the one doing it, and I'm the one who letting things happen, or I'm the one who says what goes and what doesn't. And I've been through something very similar when I traveled to Lebanon back in 2016. Like I told you before, I wasn't born and raised in Egypt. I was born and raised in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, in a very cosmopolitan society. So I'm very good with accents. So
Mm.
when I traveled to Lebanon and people would ask me where I'm from, and I would just talk with them with the same dialect, with the same accent. And they would, it's just out of question. It's like when they ask me where you're from Lebanon. Are you from the south? Are you from the north? It's not where you're from in the world. And I would let them have it. And I would continue communicating because I wanted to have that connection. It's like I don't want
Yeah.
to feel like a stranger. We're
Yeah.
together. And I liked it. And it felt so nice to be included within this culture, within this, sharing, even if it was temporary. So I let them have it for a while, but then at a certain point, I mean, my husband gave it away because he's not good with accents. So it had to come that we're not Lebanese. But that moment of sharing, of,
Right.
that is co-creation. That was magical. That was truly magical. So it's very similar to what you just described. So for me,
That, yeah.
yeah, it's the wording. It's the wording because each of us has their own experience and allocate meaning to words, each to their own. For me, this word would represent forced authority. To you, represent co-creation. So when I kind of like wrote that remark as a reader with her own background and with her own perception and her own, that was the first thing that hit my mind. So this is something that is just going to happen. You're writing something to the world, and each reader will have their own background and will see the words differently in different light according to their own experiences and backgrounds. So I think it would be nice to share the work with more than one person and see what the words that will come. Like for me, I really connected with co-creation. For you, it was
Mm.
the whole construct of reality. Someone else would probably, it would resonate if you used another word. And it would be really nice to just, allow us to, to be part of this. You know, we're part of the journey. We're part of the manuscript. We're part of everything. It's very interactive. So this was very enriching to me to understand concepts. Very enriching.
Thank you. And that slides right in nicely to the next point, which was also in the introduction. I write about some words being easily understandable in general conversation, and some are contextual, and some you're not going to understand at all. This is a clue to where I've been, the words that I use, but this also causes an unreliable reader. Your experience of the story is interrupted, and all you can do is watch what's happening around you for more clues. And I remember you being like, unreliable reader. Let's see. Open up that comment to see.
Yeah.
Your story writing is so cute. You're like, this is my take on it. There's no such thing as an unreliable reader, because as you said, each person interprets words and meanings differently according to their brain filters. Calling them unreliable is extremely judgmental and ruins the magic of storytelling, and it's very much an act of tyranny. Yeah. There's this word that kicks around every now and again in German, and it's basically like this. It says language imperialism. And I don't know if it was like a song or just a text or just like a catchphrase that was floating around when I was living there. And I'm hearing it in my mind echo now, and I'm probably going to bungle because I haven't practiced my German in so long, but the phrase was anti-language imperialism, Gegensprachimperialismus, right? So it's so, it kind of rolled off. So it's so interesting to me to hear you saying that it's a bit of tyranny by calling the reader unreliable. And but we do have in more traditional forms of writing, there is something called the unreliable narrator. So I'm curious, I wanted to take this opportunity to have you explain more. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I also think that there's something there in the way that it's kind of like not quite a game of telephone, but you tell a story to 20 different people, you're going to have 20 different stories reflected back. So then where is the story, and how reliable is that person to reflect back or to carry forth that story? So I'm curious if you see any parallels around an unreliable narrator and why they get a pass to be unreliable and not the unreliable reader.
Well, to be honest, I don't like the word unreliable, because unreliable means that my version is not something that is validated or respected. It's not the truth. Well, nothing's the truth. It's a story. It's my story. That's my truth. It's your story. That's your truth. Like you said, we mirror what's inside us. So why should anyone be called unreliable? When you write a piece of fiction, you ask the reader to suspend their disbelief, right? We suspend our disbelief. So why on earth am I calling the narrator unreliable?
Because this is autofiction. And so that's where it's like, it's me, but it's not me. It's really a form of embodied transformation on the page. Like I think you mentioned having gone to psychodrama groups. It's like embodying this change. And so if this is my conversation with the world, that at times from which I was so disconnected, this is also my way of like going like poke, hey, look, for me, who you didn't understand, which caused me not to understand me.
Yes. For me, the point with unreliable reader is that now when you called me unreliable, you denied me that privilege to connection or the privilege to interaction. I'm going to interact and I'm going to bring my perception and whatever it is that I'm mirroring and whatever it is that I'm believing into your manuscript. When you call me unreliable, it means that you're not validating that, when that is the whole purpose of the manuscript, to connect and to actually have that interplay between what I see and what you're going through. So that's why I didn't see eye to eye with the concept of unreliable reading. We are actually, our entire work is based on the unreliability because each of us has their own perception. We all see the world through our eyes, through our backgrounds, through our feelings, through our traumas, through our identities. So it is going to be different. That's the beauty of it. I mean, you write a work of piece, and it will resonate with me one way, it will resonate with you in a completely different way. And that's diversity, inclusion, diversity, connection. So when you say unreliable, it means none of that is validated. So that was my point. That was my purpose.
Yeah.
And call them. Yeah.
I think this is also this speaks to one thing that I am really passionate about, and that's just how much the publishing industry or publishing establishment, the creative writing establishment, is like, it has to be a certain way to be a work. And so for people who are not able-minded, and I'm finding more and more when I work with individuals who have sensory or neurodivergence experiences, or, you know, exceptional sensory experiences, you know, they're writing in images, or they're writing through color, or they're writing non-sequentially, or their mind reel is going so fast and it's jumping. And so time is so relative to them. And in that respect, what I would like to mirror in autofiction is, okay, that's where you're at right now. Okay, cool. So that is your story. Is that something for other people to connect with? Yes, because other individuals who have had those experiences will say, that's me too. And it's not so much about the actual work as it is about representation. And I have still, now Meta Work came out in 2021, I still have people reaching out to me saying, I thought I was the only one whose mind was so crazy and who like had trouble with this and that. And what I realized is that I'm giving them hope, because they see me, and then I've worked with it. I found my way to sort of vent that experience. And also, it is who I am, you know, so there's a lot of hope, and just saying like, okay, so yeah, and what? My mind's a mess. So what? So, you know, I figure out how to deal with it. So so maybe this is still part of, you know, the rebel in me fronting, or the punk in me, who's just like, okay, well, I hear that, but I'm still going to do it my way, because I feel very strongly about emulating that lack of connection, because our world is kind of dumpster fire because there is so much lack of connection. And so that is, in a way, like the place being reflected, the world being reflected in my own personality. And I have a couple of spiritual teachers who are in the lineage of Ayurveda and Dr. Lad, and they talk a lot about place being reflected in personality. And they also talk a lot about us being in times of Vata culture, so air culture. Like our minds are creating, like there's nothing to ground them in, and it's all media based. We have a lot of media based, and I wanted the media. I almost wanted to make the media a character in this work. I'll do it in another one, because this one's already full. But there's something about, you know, what I was talking about, you know, these images or these personalities or narratives preceding you. I can remember, I didn't put the piece that I wrote about India, about being in Kerala, India, in this one, but there was a time, and it was right after 9/11, so it was like January 2002. I was in India by myself. All the Westerners had left, so I was, you know, I had this whole Ayurvedic resort to myself, and so basically there was nothing to do. And at the end of the day, when all the maids and the housekeepers were finished with their tasks, we would all just gather around the TV and watch Baywatch. But to them, for a lot of them were Aboriginal folks, and some were Indian, Desi Indian. Their world stopped at the borders of Kerala. It expanded through these television programs. And so I could
Mhm.
talk through the roof about how not everyone in the United States looks like people on Baywatch. And they're like, no,
Mhm.
you're all blonde haired, you all wear bathing suits. And I'm like, eh. So I wasn't as heavily tattooed as I am now, right? And when they knew an American was coming and I didn't look like a Baywatch person, and then I'm telling you like, oh, there's a whole nation, and we don't all look like that. They were just like, there's no way. There's no way. So I think that in this time of Vata culture, media culture influencing who we expect people to be,
Mhm.
I think that there is, a lot of disconnection. And to bring it to sort of the spiritual sort of grounding, and I don't think that's to be expected from some people are just going to stay unconscious. This is what I know now, being 42 years old. I'm like, okay, this is what I know now. But at the time, I was just, as I was younger, and I did most of my traveling in my 20s and early 30s, and teens, like I was just expecting people to meet me where I was at, to always want to see me, to somehow be able to overcome this preconceived notion that they had of what I, as a woman traveling solo, a woman traveling solo from the United States, what I was actually doing and why I would be in all these far-flung places. But it just, I don't know, I guess I don't want to say I stopped traveling because I didn't figure that out, but I stopped traveling because I was like, there's no figuring that out. Some people are just going to
Mhm.
stay lacking that consciousness or that presence. And I think too, that's why I took such liberties with, it isn't meant to be judgmental, point taken. I do see that calling someone the unreliable reader, it's a little spiky. It's a little salty.
It is. It is. It is. But I can relate. I can
Mm,
relate because I face the same issues here in Egypt, where there's a point where I just have to accept it that they won't be able to meet me in a place where I'm. It's just that. So at the beginning, I used to be so angry. What's
yeah.
wrong with you? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought. You are completely unreliable. How dare you not see eye to eye with whatever it is that I'm thinking, believing? And I would go into like uh, explosive conversations. But now, the older we get, I don't know, wiser maybe. But I've learned to just accept that everyone's alone on their own path, on their own journey. Maybe, some people are comfortable just being in the same place all their lives. Some people, it's just part of who they are, where they're here. They just have to move on, transcend, understand things, see things, awaken. And we're not all the same. And it'll always be like that. So for me, because I'm very pro humanity, for me, we're all humans and I respect everyone. And I respect you, whatever you are on your journey. You're not agreeing with me, that's fine. It's okay. I see you, I listen to you. Where it's not meant to be. I respect you, I accept you, we part ways, and I move on. So I could really relate to what you're saying. And they have their own construct, their own world, and I have my own world that is continuously transforming and changing as I move on. Who knows, maybe next year I won't be so happy about the things I believed in the year before. Things keep changing. I keep understanding, you know, being faced with so many revelations, things that didn't, your awareness keeps growing. Exactly the same thing like with the universe. The universe keeps expanding. Nothing,
Yeah.
nothing's constant. Nothing's the only constant is change. So for me, I understand where you're coming from, but I would still won't call them unreliable. I still wouldn't use that word.
All right, how about this? We'll make a deal. I'll think on it. I mean, it's only the manuscript's going into layout and production, so I'll think on it and maybe I'll change it. I do like the mirroring of the unreliable narrator to the unreliable reader, but okay, maybe that's a little spiky. And
maybe you could
also
just expand on that. You like keep the wording, but expand. Yeah, you can expand on what it is to you, or maybe throw in a little teasers on what's to come, so as to explain the whole thing. That would actually give us more as we read, and it will enrich the manuscript. You know, it's like introduce us to this new vision.
Yeah, point taken. I did expand on it a little bit after your feedback, and I also want to say too, as you had brought this up before, Keats Cooker is coming out in a print edition, which I think is going to be really cool. You had made a comment at some point in the manuscript about maybe calling out with a design element or something every time I switch from I to you. There are a few places, but I think that was a brilliant comment, and I did make a note of that for the designer. Shout out to Sharon Wasko, no relation. She's amazing. She's the designer. And so I think, the print, when it's in your hands, I think it's going to be really fun to play with. And the digital version is still something I'm cooking up, because I think that could be even more interesting. I'm looking into different ways to like link throughout the chapters, and a few of the cues will have to be, like there's one cue that says drop the book or throw the book and then open it to whatever page it opens to, and read from that. Well, obviously you can't do that, but
I would love to do that.
With the print, sure, yeah. I'm gonna figure out something with the digital. So the digital version will be longer. It'll take a while for that one to actually come out. But I think too that in considering autofiction, I mean, to me, autofiction totally is a Gen X thing. It totally comes from, us growing up with MySpace and like AOL forums and like all of these. I think there was like Live Blog. I used a different one, but like all these places where we could just like put our thoughts, not necessarily plotted out or like really advancing anything, just like, here are my thoughts. It's very, navel gazing and like, just very, very much an observation of the world. I can see how, as we were younger and we kind of started to write more in that online space that was opening up, I can see how autofiction is an evolution of that. And what I always think about too, just because I'm me and I'm Gen X and I did some uni in London in 1999, we had a social studies or a communication study professor who was like devoted to Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message, man. The medium is the message. And so those theories stayed with me. That idea stayed with me. And so I think too that when I write creatively, just as like an evolution of all of these different influences that I was surrounded by, and of course rave culture, I mean, yeah, anything that I do is immersive. Being in London, being in the warehouse parties, like it was just the greatest to go underground, literally underground, and you're submerged into this world. And for a lot of my friends, it was their chance to like get crazy, dress up, and I just would go with me because this is just how I look, or but it was about being immersed in a different world. So the immersion aspect is something that I really wanted to play with Keats Cooker. So again, you're immersed in the story because you're co-creating with it, because you're choosing the chapters and how you want to interact. You're traveling because you're kind of like, I can read this person's story or I can make my own version of it. And then the medium is the message, the message that maybe some things jump out at you on the page. Maybe this delivery is really a reflection and a work that is like being in the world. And I know for the first few years of being online, like you could be in like banner hell or like, pop-up hell, where you would try to be reading something and like pop-ups were everywhere. Now it seems like it's a little more, now there are better practices for stuff being online. But I just remember, again, that staccatic attention that inability to stay with a thread or just kind of jump around like you're jumping around in Keats' cooker. And so it's even so the unreliable narrator is there too, because I am by nature, I'm just completely jumping around, and that shows that I'm still so much in my head. And ultimately towards the end, when I do start to have this emotional opening and I'm like, oh, and then seeing the integration in the scenes around me and seeing how things are kind of like coming back together and coming to me, it's such a different experience. It's such a different narrator by the end, I think.
It is. I mean, that is the nature of storytelling, is we're showing an arc. You know?
Yeah.
We transform. And that is life. You know,
Yeah.
story. Mirror life. You start somewhere and you end up somewhere else completely different. And that is death, rebirth, transformation.
Yeah.
That is reality.
So there is like a little there, I mean, it is traditional. It's not just pure conceptual. It's highly conceptual, but
yes.
it's not all conceptual.
It's
I did want to land there. And, you know, I'm excited to see the feedback because I'm curious to know how many people are just going to read it straight through. Like how many people aren't even going to choose your own adventure, you know, and I'm maybe they need to read it straight through and then have their own adventure. I don't know. I mean, well, you edited it, so you're kind of like you're over here. You're in a different kind of category, but
yeah.
I was reading through it the other night. I don't know what I was. I think I literally my laptop was in my bed and I was like, I want something to read. I just finished a different book and it happened to be open on my tab and I'm like, I'm gonna read it. And I was like, this is so dang good because this is exactly what I wanted to make. And
that
your
is
comments
awesome.
were really like, yeah, your comments were spot on. And I was like, yeah, okay. My heart started to swell. I'm like, this is the creative validation that now this baby's ready to go. Because, you know, for I mean, look, it's hard to get anything published anyway, but like I made the definitive choice that when I was going to do autofiction, I was going to produce it on my own through Planet Dust Enterprises. And also I just released a creative, oh, I do have a copy, a creative, what I'm calling transformative nonfiction work. Nope, I don't have a copy. I just released something called The Practice, which is a workbook on exploring the transpersonal worldview. And it's also got some writing prompts. And it's grounded in a spiritual framework, psychosynthesis, so psychology. So, you know, you can use writing in alignment with that personal path that you're on, that journey of growth. But I think it's really important to produce work as well, because going back to something that we had started talking about, or maybe we didn't capture that chat on this recording, but there's something about seeing yourself in what's already out there. And when you don't see yourself in what's already out there, then you just got to make it. You are your own gatekeeper, I think.
Yes.
And that's why I think publishing is punk as heck. I think publishing is so powerful because it's the gatekeeper to culture and knowledge, you know. And I mean, even you reading works in translation, you know, you and writing, and you know, there's been a couple of times where you've mentioned what a different experience you're different when you write in English. And you know, I just think that the art of publishing is just, it's so important to continue to create spaces as our personalities and our individual sort of personhoods evolve. Until you see yourself, keep going and make your own.
Yes, and I think that your work, this work you're offering, is really important to your clients. I mean, there is, you know, you have there is an audience for this. People actually need this, and usually the industry is based on entertainment, even when it's not fiction. and escapism. And the challenge now is to actually focus on transformation, on growth, on awakening, rather than escapism.
Yeah.
To me, this is the true purpose of storytelling. I'm not telling you a story to entertain you. I'm telling you a story to widen your perception, allow you to see beyond what you're already trapped in. That's the whole point. So works like this that you're producing is important, and especially that you're involving the reader. I mean, we need to have that kind of immersive, integrative experience that we're part of this. I mean, I think this is the solution to a lot of the struggles out there in the world. I mean, there's that lack of integration. There's the us versus you. There's the other. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, in accordance to the violence and the crazy stuff that's happening out there, I mean, it's all because of the lack of integration. I mean, we're basically just one species. So it is natural that we are involved and that we come from one place and we share. I think that's the whole purpose to our existence, that sharing, that integration, that I have my own view, you have your own view, and we just share together, integrate and build something bigger. So, I mean, works like yours serve that. So it is important to have, I mean, it is a wise thing to produce it yourself, because if you go to traditional market, they'll always want to put it within a certain frame. The frame they know, the frame that will make money, the frame that will satisfy a certain status quo or certain idea. And that is not what we're here to do. That's not what we're here to do. That's not the purpose. So it is wonderful to know why we write and to target our audience and to create something that is essential for the human experience. To me, this is the idea of integration. That's what's lacking in this world. Integration. I'm part of you, you're part of me. That sharing, that interplay. I mean, imagine if all cultures could just, you know, share, interplay, I mean, connect. We would add to each other rather than segregate and create groups and point fingers and start wars. So
Yeah, you
we
know,
need more work.
that struck me too, that I want to say the last chapter, but maybe it was the first chapter. No, I think it was one of the first chapters that became the last chapter, where I was at a ceremony, a Jewish ceremony. Okay. And then they were like loads of us from different faiths. Okay. Which I did move to the end. You had said something about it being what a beautiful showing of integration. And that struck me, because I was like, oh yeah, that's what it was. It was a powerful experience that was intuitive to me to have, having grown up, as I mentioned, in the New York City area. And so being surrounded by different cultures and different spiritual beliefs was my normal, except that was my normal. And so being out in the world and seeing how fractured people are because of their culture and their spiritual belief, and even like politics and geography and stuff, I was just always like, I didn't value that experience for what it was. I just wrote about it because I thought this was really cool, this fits here. And you were just like, no, this is great integration. And I was like, bam, that's it. That's what I was looking for. It was validation, and I was looking for, I just didn't know that's what I was looking for. And so you really brought some really great attention there. And then I had it at the end, because, like, you know, in this whole storytelling arc, then, you know, I'll start with it. Then
it felt like the natural culmination of the journey to come to the point of integration at the end, you know, because there was so many places where the narrator was, you know, completely fractured, and there's like that dissociation. So it's beautiful to come at the end of this journey and into, there was that chapter about you being in a retreat, that was also integration. And yeah, and then come to that, it felt like the like a wonderful climax, I would like to say, or it's just it's there. It's like the journey. I could see the journey complete with that kind of thing. It's like that's
Which is
the whole point of
like,
yeah.
what a gift to hear that. What a gift to hear that from you. Because how does one do that in a choose your own adventure novel? But yeah, my face, oh, my face is gonna hurt because now I'm smiling, and now like it's just so amazing to hear that, because that was what I intended, and that's what I thought I did. But until I hear it from the reader going, yes,
Mhm.
I see the journey and I see this culmination, and yeah, that just feels so good. My face is gonna hurt for the rest of the day.
And I can't wait to see this in print because I know that this will have a different feel, different energy to hold the book and to like I'm going to share it. I'm going to my story with that, share in that. It's definitely different than reading a digital version. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, it's going out to some blurbers, some folks from whom I'm soliciting a blurb for the back. And right now, because it's in just a Google Doc, that's how we work. I am printing the manuscripts because I think that will I'm printing and sending, the manuscripts rather than just saying, okay, here's the link, check this out. Yeah, I think that will give the more full experience, and I'm hoping to have it out by December, by my birthday. But yeah, it's just my designer is busy, and we're gonna try to fit it in for the end of the year. But of course, the end of the year just it's the end of the year for us. There's just like a lot happening.
It'll be a good start to 2024.
It will be, yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah, it's almost there. It's almost there. And I've already started thinking of my next project, both creative or transformative nonfiction as well as autofiction. So I kind of want to be like, okay, like I can't, move on without this one having been complete. But yeah, this was a long time in writing, a long time in getting together. I think I sat with it for maybe 2 or 3 years, even before I reached out to you. And then now that it's finally taken shape and form, now I'm like, yeah, now's the time. It feels so good, and I'm ready to put this
time to make more of that.
Yeah. So I want to thank you so much. I love our conversation. And for people who are watching, we spoke for like 45 minutes even before I hit record. It's just we this is what we do. We just get going. So
yeah.
Riham, thank you so much. I hope you have a delightful rest of your day into evening. And
thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Thank you. And it was such a privilege reading your work. Thank you again.
Bless you. Thank you. It's such a privilege to have had your feedback and also the sparring, because we didn't agree on some things, but we kind of worked it out in a way that was constructive. And I feel like this was such an incredible creative project, but also learning project. So again, thank you so much.